we're here to learn.
Yes.
I say this, you come into this world of nothingness through ovum and sperm and this conception. And none of this nothingness, you're bringing with you what you're here to experience.
When the thoughts are calmly collected and the imagination is properly directed, the dots are easily connected.
I am with Hunter Williamson, and this is, guys, such a pleasure because I met you how many years ago?
Cabbage Town.
Jet Fuel, like at Jet Fuel. I remember the name of the bar because it was called Jet Fuel.
I think I was actually above Ben Wicks then. I think that was like 2014 or earlier. No, it wasn't 2014. No. It would have been like 2010, 2008.
Yeah, I say earlier. Yeah. Because I think I was referred to you by Hugh Riley.
Yeah, Hugh.
I think it was Hugh that referred me to you. And the thing that stuck with me the most was that in our reading, you told me, actually, both my parents' moon is in Scorpio.
Oish.
And you know what it was that actually I recall that never left was if moon Scorpio, he's like, either you were like chopped to death in like battle or you were like tortured. Because he's like, Scorpio's espionage. It's like you were like getting intel. Whatever it was, it resonated with me so deeply, the reading that you gave me. And to have this opportunity to once again.
Reconnect.
10 years later, a decade.
20 years.
No,
almost 20 years. No, almost 20. I was at 14.
10. 14, 24 now.
Yeah, maybe
10.
14.
A decade.
Yeah.
A decade later. And a decade, we know numerology.
2014, I moved to the Colonnade. This was way before that. So
it was even before that.
Yeah, it was either I was living at Ben Wicks or at the cottage at the farm. So that would have been 2005 through 2013. So I would say it was about 2011 or earlier.
Ah, okay. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe you're right. In any case, guys, time, the acronym, you know me, I love my acronyms. Temporarily induced mind experiment.
Yo.
Time. A temporarily induced mind experiment. So who's doing this experiment? This idea of God. What is God? Creation, creativity, and the creation and the created all at once. And it's hard because it's such a. My daughter's moon is in Sag, and you're a Sag, right? You're
I'm Sag Capricorn. Like I'm right on that door.
Right on the cusp.
Like right on the door.
But
I'm
like
6 degrees Capricorn, very little.
But your Jupiter's in what, Gemini?
Jupiter's in Gemini and Mercury's in Sag. That means either verbal diarrhea, or that you, which is true, or your mind is expansive and it works actually with visualization really well.
Right.
Creative visualization really well.
Right.
I've noticed that anyway.
And I see it in my daughter because like from such a young age, she's already like aware of like the existential crisis of trying to visualize existence. And she asks questions sometimes that prompt me as her father to have to really think, how am I going to answer this? But I think that's what Sag is. Jupiter, it's like expansion. And then like the opposite of Jupiter is Saturn, contraction.
Well, no, the philosophy was, and correct me if I'm wrong, people out there, the reality is that Uranus was the father of both Jupiter and Saturn, and that's your Greek ancestry.
Uranus was the
And where we're moving now, as we've talked about, we don't want to get too much into that yet, but the fascination with Sagittarius is that it actually is an octave, and then Saturn goes into the next octave, and then the highest octave is Uranus. So Uranus is again is about equality. We've spoken about this, you and I.
Yeah, and it hit me so hard when you use the word octave, because I'm a
octave.
musician.
Yes,
and it's like
and I sang too. So it's these octaves, you get a C or a C sharp or a D, or the thing that I find fascinating is humanity is ready for another 20-year cycle, as was the end of the 18th century. So American Revolution, we talked about this, French Revolution,
right.
Conflict with France,
Right.
Catherine the Great. We can go on and on and on. What was going on, and then the development of another imperial leader, as in Napoleon. But we're going through this again.
We're
It began a
going through
little last year.
Yeah.
Then it was really big from January through the present day. And now Pluto is moving backward to Capricorn, where it was since 2007. So we're in a really powerful world transformation. It's also vibrational, and people's vibrational energy is heightening. We can feel tired at times.
Totally, yeah, because
Well,
there's
you're Leo.
so much going
You're
on.
Leo, and I mean, I have Leo ascendant. Again, it's
We
this
share that.
energy. Yes,
we both have
share
the
that.
Leo
Yes.
ascendant, and
Yeah.
we both have Leo ascendant. We just discovered this as we were talking. Yours was 29.
Mine's 28, 29 degrees, and it's
28,
like I've already
29?
been there, done that.
And mine's like 26. It's
And
not
you're
far from
almost
it.
the same. So you've already been the singer and the entertainer, and not to say you're not going to do it still.
Yeah, because it's calm. It's like what I know, and I can.
That's right.
I can do. But like for those of our audience who don't understand yet when we're talking about degrees, and I don't blame you, because even me, it took a long time before I even understood degrees. Degrees means like you're at the end of 29, meaning like there's 30 degrees. Is that correct?
Well,
of each constellation,
29,
30.
and then the 30th, you step right into the next.
The next.
But
30.
what I believe is the fact that you're going through dimensions, and it's all about the procession of life. And astrology, again, is a philosophy based upon planetary energies, not unlike the aspect of, where a person's at when they're 7, 14 through formulation of the ego and development and sexual development. They've evolved, they've changed, they recognize from a very different level, not any better than they did at 7. More advanced, more
Just
learned,
more advanced,
like a
more
university
learned. Yes,
compared to
yes.
someone that's a laborer. God bless them both. They're equally successful in their own right.
Right.
So it has to do with levels of, one of my friends had said to me, she says, oh, you're 28 degrees Leo ascendant. It's not as important for you to be worried about the Leo. You have it because I love antiquity.
Right.
But she says you don't need it.
You
And I do
don't-
sometimes.
You don't
It's just,
need it. That's
yeah,
a big.
It's not the 4 degrees.
You don't
Leo
leverage
ascendant.
or lean
Yes,
on it.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm
I get
learning
that.
about the Capricorn
I get
thing.
that.
Because I'm in that very early degrees, like, we talked about with yourself. Everything is degrees from what I'm learning, and I'm learning every day about that. And I mean, I'm certainly not the level of these master astrologers who I have tremendous respect for.
Just so you guys know, this guy's saying that right now. And some people think of me as a master astrologer. I think of Hunter as a master astrologer. And here you are talking about, but I don't think, there are so many dimensions of astrology. And this thing called mastery, it's such a, man, it's
entitled. It's a bit of an entitled description.
and elusive.
Yes.
Is the word I was looking for.
That's true.
It's so
It is.
elusive.
But I have great respect. We were speaking about her before, and I'll mention her because I love her. There's a gal in Canada that has astrolutely.com. She's out west. She's phenomenal. She's an Aries, Aquarius ascendant. I've heard her a million times. She's phenomenal. I love Penny Thornton. Susan Miller is very good. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. Robin Armstrong, who I met in Canada.
Oh, man. I know
Robin's
Robin.
fabulous.
Yes.
He's fabulous.
Robin can we just
I love Robin,
is it rising Scorpio Libra?
Yes. And he said to me, Hunter, you
Moon
need to
Virgo?
learn the harmony between the notes. I will never forget that. The time I was singing in the entertainment business, and I was doing the readings too, but
You're singing and dancing. You're a true artist.
I was doing it. Well, it's all same side of the brain, right?
Right hemisphere.
And
right hemisphere.
yeah,
not
right
left.
hemisphere.
Left
But-
is all the science and
that's
analytical.
but
and-
it's a jump between them, because remember we talked about this left lobe, right lobe,
Right.
in the center of the
Right.
Hindu faith, right? That third eye. That is that. When I say about doing creative visualization, it's getting yourself to that between the alpha beta level.
yes.
So it's finding a combination of both.
When you mention art, I just think of the right brain. Like I'm a
well,
left-handed.
of course, yes, of course. I'm right-handed, but I can write with my left.
But you're super in your right brain, like
Yes.
dancing, singing,
yes,
expressing. And,
yes.
Sorry. So okay. So I'm right. So he was a rising Scorpio Libra.
Yeah.
I think
I
it
haven't
was
seen Robin in years. I did connect with him again on Instagram or
Shout
Facebook.
outs to Robin. Like,
Robin.
one of our predecessors. Like
Oh, he's brilliant. A brilliant guy.
Who
I mean,
created this-
I will never forget Hunter with double Capricorn Leo ascendant. You need to learn to respect and understand the harmony between the notes. And he hit the piano.
Wow.
And he had a
even-
D,
even
and then he
used-
went to a C.
Wow.
And I said, the actual reverberation of the chord. He said, yes, you've got it. Pay attention. And I didn't get, I was young. You know, I
Because
was young.
astrology is music. It's the music of the spheres, as
Sure it is.
Pythagoras called the postulation of the spheres. Like astrology is based on the same 12 archetypes that we call the chromatic scale.
Yes.
The chromatic scale, the merging of the 5 black keys and the 7 white keys, the 12.
Yes.
And you know what's interesting is that these 12 correspond to the 12 thoracic vertebrae of the human spine,
That's
like the
right.
human rib cage.
That's right.
So, and that's the thing about Robin that like stands out to me as well, is like he created this, what did he call it? The celestial harp.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
The celestial harp. And it was based on phi, the golden mean ratio. Phi is where we get the word 5, like the 5 fingers, which is what distinguishes us from the monkeys or the apes
Yes.
that we talk about, that we evolved from.
I do believe
What are your
we're not going to get
thoughts?
into that because I totally
I know
believe
that's deep.
that's a whopper for me.
It is.
Let me just tell you a little story. Can I tell you a story for
Yes,
a sec?
yes.
Fast. So when I was a boy, of course, we would go to the Toronto Zoo a lot. My parents left the beach at East End, and we went out to Military Trail. And I didn't really fit in there, but I hung around the zoo a lot. And I got to see a baby gorilla. And I was maybe
like
a baby gorilla.
Wow.
Maybe I was about 11, 12 years old, I think. And I came home and I said to my mom, Mom, I think this has all been a lie. I said, I think we're far more related.
How old were you?
12. I said, I think we're far more related to the animal kingdom than we give ourselves credence for, because that baby looked at me and his anatomy was that of my brother as a baby. So you see, and now of course you've heard that, theologists and scientists have said that we are Homo sapien, a high form of primate that has died out, and whatever else. Probably alien. Sorry, but that's my philosophy.
Alien just means from like somewhere else. Yeah.
Yes.
Alien
Yes.
to us is like the stuff underwater.
We don't know. Alien is we don't know. We're unaware.
Like look no further than underwater, the deep blue sea. Like there are species that are so alien to us.
It's unbelievable. Octopi, right? Octopus. One of the things I just read on the internet through one of the fellows who's also Greek American, who I love. He's the fellow that has the Ancient Aliens.
Oh,
I love him with the spiky hair. I love him. I love him.
With the big
Yes, I love him.
I don't remember his name, but I know my brother would tell you.
I love him. I love him. And he was speaking about the fact that they went to speak to a tribe one of them was in Africa and one of them was in South America. And they said, the Greys, they live under the ground. They've been here for centuries. And if you look at a lot of the carvings, even when I was in Mexico with my second ex-partner, I went down to Poza Rica and Veracruz and all these areas. I had to meditate above the clouds at these beautiful places. And you should see the carvings on the stone. It's like, what are they kidding? These are aliens.
Right. And these carvings, what they call hieroglyphics, are what today, funny enough, in hip hop we call graffiti. Funny
there you
enough.
go. That's right. Yes.
Because like before we grab the first thing that we'll do, human beings, before we look down to start writing, which is what the 12-step program called the Rothschilds indoctrination program, we call education. We don't look down and write. We write like this.
Yes.
So hieroglyphics are an expression of our spirit.
That's right.
And when you look at the hieroglyphics, whether it's in Mexico or Egypt, I wanted to ask you this. In Egypt, I know that like the hieroglyphics are etched into the rock in a way that's like atomical fusion. It's not even like ink.
No.
It's not even like sketched in. Is it the same thing in
I would say that it was a combination of both. I would say that some of them, to me, looked as though they had actually been etched in.
Etched in.
Others of which is a formulated paint or something, whether they actually did have elements of substance they use that we have no aware of today. I'm sure that science knows.
Yeah.
Sure, science does know.
Well, we want to think science knows, but since the scamdemic, we learned that science is an ism, no different than any religion, keeping us within this schism, this prison, psychological prison.
Yes.
So science, if we really, let's just, can I ask you?
Sure.
Like, what is science to you? Can you define science?
Well, I mean, I think science is an evolution of depth of investigation. I think it's a very difficult analogy.
A depth of
Investigation, because that's what it is. And what is the science? The science of plant. Well, first of all, my name escapes me. One of the early British, remember he was the explorer in Britain, and he went around to all of the islands, and he took flora and fauna from all of these places and investigated the workings of the flora and fauna. I feel absolutely ignorant because my mother would kill me that I didn't remember this. But he was a British sailor, and of course it was a fleet that went around and took all of these elements, which the Victoria and Albert Museum in London has a lot of that. But I mean, it is an assessed intellectual, judgment through investigation.
Okay.
That's what science is.
That's it right there. An assessed intellectual investigation. So it's a process. It is. Yes. It's a constant process.
Yeah. It's still continuing. It's still continuing. Look
continuum.
At illness, disease, diagnoses. We can just go on and on and on. I mean, look at the things that have concurred even over the last few years since COVID.
Exactly.
You never heard about anybody, going through immunotherapies for cancer. This is a bit of a newbie. The last 5 or maybe more, but as far as I'm concerned, I've only heard 5 or 6 years of this, right?
To me, I think of science as like a process, exactly. Like It's just like a hypothesis. We postulate something, and then we go through these motions, which have a very specific set of controls, because in order to solve for Y, we need to keep Z. We need to keep X and Y kind of controlled, like steady, so we can solve for Z. Because I'm a very like my mind is so math based.
Yes,
I got 100% in grade 10 math.
Wow.
And it's only because the computation aspect of math made so much sense. BEDMAS, everything has a process, an order of an operation, brackets, exponents, division, right? Multiplication, addition, subtraction. But then there was also formulas, which I had to memorize. And I know that's where maybe the average person doesn't have that same retention and memory, but like I have this like crazy memory, and the formulas, they meant something to me, because it's like you're telling me that pi r squared is like gives us the formula of the area of a circle. Like, so somehow like that meant something to me. And here we are, like with this backdrop right here with this fractal circle. Like, so like, it just was so special to me. So the idea that like there's an order made, like it gave me a sense of like security. My conscience, my soul, whatever it is, my being, my existence, loved to anchor in some kind of a formula or order of operation. To me, science is just like this order. Like you hypothesize something, then you like make sure that you control certain things so that we can test for that thing. And then we made observations, made a conclusion. But the conclusion, here's the key. The kicker is that your conclusion is not the all and end all. It's just like the working title.
That's right.
So that we can make
It's ever forming.
Yeah. So we can make a better hypothesis in the next experiment. Control even more in depth.
Yes.
As you mentioned, depth of inquisition. Like, so I think this is where we have lost our trajectory. This is where we have lost our ability with our rational minds as a species, as human beings, to like look at things from a very literal, substantial process. You know what I mean? Like, and I think this is why astrology spoke to me in the way it did, because even though when I was first introduced to astrology, I thought it was a bunch of bullshit, but in my attempt to debunk it, I couldn't bear but like believe in it, because I was like, holy shit, 12 sets of ribs, 12 notes of the chromatic scale, 12 faculties of the human psyche, 12 constellations of what we call the precession of the equinoxes, all of this stuff, and hence connecting the dots.
Only in our atmosphere. There's many more.
More constellations?
Many more.
Well, apparently the Hindus have like multiple. But
well, the Hindus, that's a fascinating. We're going to get too far into that. But I mean, I find the Hindu faith fascinating because you talk about Ganush and you talk about them, the aspect about leaving. And this, I mean, to me, there's so much deeper. I mean, and Christ spoke about it. And in the Hebrew faith, they spoke about it. Muhammad spoke about it. I think that there's so many things that if the human animal would come together, it's very tough to do because we're carnivorous beings. And I say this to clients all the time. We're carnivorous beings. We're pack animals. We have eye teeth. We're carnivores.
We have, say that again?
Eye teeth. We have eye teeth. We're carnivores.
Eye teeth.
Yes.
Eye teeth.
Eye teeth. These are eye teeth. So you're carnivorous. You know, when you look at a herbivore, they have flat teeth.
Right.
We've learned from feeding ground beef to cattle. If this is not a cool thing, you want mad cow disease, keep doing it. So I think the thing that we're learning here is to keep the human animal at bay. To be able to work together is a tough, tough call. So you're talking about this whole secular element about the, the aspect of our atmosphere, of the whole constellations.
Our perspective.
Yes, our perspective is one that is minimal to do with more and more. I mean, I think it just goes on and on and on.
Well, then this is where I want to ask you this question.
Sure.
There's this flat Earth community. There's this community of people
Wasn't that
want
Italian?
to believe. Apparently,
I just started
Copernicus.
joking.
Well, apparently Copernicus is it, or like?
Well, he was Greek. Wasn't he
Greek?
Greek, Copernicus?
I don't know. I don't know whether he's Greek. He's European.
In my ignorance.
He was European.
Yes.
Regardless, he was European. But like, there seems to be evidence for both sides. And like, I love Marty Leeds' documentary called Flat Earth, subtitle The Ultimate Litmus Test. And I love it. He's an Aquarian brother. Actually, we're going to get him on the podcast soon. He's just touring right now in Europe. But like, he did a really good presentation of the flat earth theory from a perspective of a person like me, who before I believed in astrology, I came from a perspective of like trying to debunk astrology because I thought it was just a bunch of bullshit. Like,
yes,
you're going to try to tell me who I am based on the fact that like I was born between these two dates and therefore I'm like a Leo because the hell. Anyways, he did the same thing with flat earth. And why do I bring that up is because you're talking about the perspective that there's only 12 according to our perspective, but that's just Western astrology.
That's right.
The Hindus, they believe there's so many more. My understanding of that, like all these constellations in the East and then 12 in the West. My understanding is that the sun rises in the East, and tell me what you think about this. The sun rises in the East. So it all begins there. Consciousness begins here. And we have all these different archetypes and all these different stuff that we're observing if we think of the scientific process.
Yes.
And then it like sets in the West. What does it mean to set? It means like, okay, we've been watching this shit long enough that now we believe that the most important are 12. It's a 12-based system. And that's what they call the 12 constellations of Western astrology. And for me, like, I tried to look into Vedic, and I have there's an episode with a brother. He's brilliant, and he did an amazing reading. And apparently, like, he was saying, like, Vedic is where it all begins. Never mind your Western stuff. And he was, like, trying to convert me.
Western tropical, yes.
Yeah. And I'm like, bro, you can't convert me, but you can inspire me. Mm-hmm. Like, my moon's in Scorpio. We talked about that. There's no converting a moon in Scorpio.
Eastern astrology is fascinating. I'm a Sagittarian in the Eastern astrology with Gemini ascendant. So it's...
Because everything's a constellation.
Yes, it's backward. But not backward wrong. It's just different. But I find it fascinating. I just...
how is that landed
I remember...
for you?
It just, I can see the Sag... My biological mother is Sagittarian. I can see the affiliation association to Sagittarius. However, I don't really relate to Sagittarians per se. I don't really relate to Capricorns either, but it's finding that happy medium.
But
Just know
your
it.
sun is right on that cusp.
We're right in the doorway, and so is my ascendant between Leo Virgo. So it's really quite fascinating.
Both your sun
Yes.
and your ascendant are cusps.
Right on the cusp. Yeah.
And that has to do with, just for those of you who are not aware, your sun has to do with the day you're born.
Your solar chart.
Solar chart.
Yes. And your natal is your ascendant.
And your natal meaning the time you were born.
Your time you were born and where the actual placements were at the time you were born.
Right. Okay, so that's the difference. Is one
But
is
you're
to do with,
still Leo. I'm still a first degree Capricorn.
yeah, technically.
And that's
like
why certain astrologers don't agree. They say, no, the closest is more your ascendant, your natal. But then, as we've spoken about with Penny Thornton from England, who I really highly respect, her philosophy is, no, you are still your sun sign. You are.
What is it there? What is the astrological what's the word? The astrological examination that utilizes the moment of conception.
I don't know. That's where I'm ignorant. I mean, I do believe that there's influence with that.
I honest to God, bro, I don't. I really just flat out don't. I think that if in the Bible, and I know the Bible is missing tons of books, but if in the Bible we know that like the soil atom, the atoms were only made into something spiritual, something alive and existential through the breath, Brahma, then I believe that this idea of when you were conceived, I don't adhere to it. Mm-hmm. When did you come out? Breathe your first breath of oxygen on this plane.
Yes.
Right? Like, I think that would have more influence on you than when you were conceived.
I think it's so, again, it's, and I'm not backtracking. It is so varied. I mean, where did dinosaurs come into play? First thing I ever said to one of the ministers or priests, I can't remember because I was affiliated to both Catholic and Protestant churches growing up, and I had a lot of Greek friends that were Orthodox. And I said, so where does the dinosaurs come in? Well, I was shot down about as fast as, can you keep this kid quiet? But right. I mean, the reality is...
Can you keep this kid quiet? Exactly.
That was my mother's favorite
We don't
line.
want any questions.
Yes. But I think the inquisitive mind says, okay, I believe that Christ did walk the earth. It was a very good Jewish family. They were Jewish. And, Mary, it's not even used anymore, the name, except in Catholicism. But they were a very strong Hebrew family.
Right.
Hebrew.
Right.
I shouldn't say Jewish. They were Hebrew.
Because those
Yes.
are two different things.
But I find it fabulous. And I mean...
Can we discern those two things? Or is that...
I don't really know. I don't think it's political. I just don't know. I
think it is political.
But I've asked some of my friends that are of the Jewish faith, what is the analogy between Hebrew and Jewish? I mean, I think Jewish is a culmination and an understanding of every sect within the structure of the Hebrew, the Kabbalah, etc., all of it. And I believe that it is a terminology that is more modernly understood.
Right.
So when you say to somebody Hebrew, they sometimes think it in past tense. And they don't necessarily, they know that they are Hebrew, but it's not necessarily explainable. Because I know a rabbi. Rabbis come to me for readings before. And he and I have had great conversations.
And what did they say about that distinction?
He just said it's a very, very difficult analogy.
Well, to me, it's not that difficult. One thing I can tell you about the Jews and the Hebrews and my life path number is 3710.
Okay.
37 is 10, right? So based on that book, it's actually right beside you, The Life You're Born to Live by Dan Millman. I'll never forget, and actually the brother, he's a musician. He was J.D. Keys is his name. One of the most brilliant pianists I ever met and I had the opportunity to work with and create with. We were in the studio one night and I was telling him, like, there's something, apparently my life path number is 37, and I'm like, I keep on seeing this number 37, and most people would call that, can't remember what the word is, but like when you keep seeing something, it's because, like, for example, when you're going to buy a Mazda 3, you'll just like see all the Mazda 3s, right? But J.D. Keys identified that everything from like the time code in the beat that we were making at that moment, that like the time, there was all these weird synchronicities that kept on pointing to 37 as being something so important. And at one point, literally, he just hit spacebar, stopped the whole project. He's like, bro, give me a second. And he went and he started Googling, he started researching. This number 37 is in every phone number of every synagogue. In fact, there's one synagogue on Bathurst Street, Toronto, Ontario, Canada, planet Earth, like for real, that is 416-373-737-3737.
Wow.
And I went and I looked into it and I realized there's some hidden secret. Now, Talmud is apparently like the interpretations of the Hebrew translation. It's the translations of like the origination of the word of God, which from what I understand, the Hebrews, the Jews, and again, they're two different things. It's just like the Muslims and Islam. There's a political movement that includes a whole agenda for planet Earth. And then there's like this essential core truth. So for me, for the Jews, it was 37. And what was crazy for me was what J.D. Keys brought forth that night in the studio. And it was that the Star of David, this symbol that Israel identifies as their political nation, the Star of David was the geometrical expression of 37 and 73, which is 37 backwards, which is like our hands. And apparently Jesus or Christ, this idea of someone who walked a planet who was like all encompassing of polarity, because that's all I see it as. Upper triangle, the phallic.
Yes.
Right? The male. The downward triangle, ovaries, right? Vagina.
Yes.
Christ did walk, and the idea is Christ is this. It's us. It's us. There's 28 phalanges. I'm born on the 28th. I'm the 7/28. I'm July 28th. All of my life's existence has only pointed me to have to like accept that this whole thing, this like ideology that like the Jews versus the Palestine, all of this is division. It's this illusion. There is no division. The Christ is you. Jesus is you. Everyone is Jesus. And part of these pieces is that everyone can be part of this. We're all this. Like if you're human, then you have, and that's the tat on my back.
Yes.
You have the inner angel and the inner demon, and
that's right. Well, I think it's very complex because
yet so simple.
Yes. I mean, the human animal, again, let's go back to basics. It's a very difficult analogy that is just layer upon layer upon layer. I don't discredit the Jewish people for their fear after what concurred in the last century. Yeah. Although it's concurred with every race at one point or another.
Armenians,
Yes,
Greeks,
it's
like
gone on forever.
genocide has been...
You know,
it's nothing new under the sun.
One thing I do respect about the Jewish peoples that I know is that they do stick together, and I think that is something that humanity doesn't do.
Yes,
for the most part, and I think that it's highly respectful that they do. And I have a tremendous group in my client base and people I know and friends that are of the Jewish faith. And I mean, I think the thing that you look at it from a very secular standpoint is that we're here to learn. Yes. I say this, you come into this world of nothingness through ovum and sperm and this conception. And none of this nothingness, you're bringing with you what you're here to experience, albeit pro and con. And then you leave. So it is a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you leave. And I mean, I had to learn that young, but I try to install that with my clients about live your life in the now, and this time too shall pass, and you will go through. It's all layers. You're going to go through lessons where it's going to be fantastic, and then things are going to collapse. And then you're going to get better, and then there's health diagnoses, or there's something. And this is all part of the process that in the years I've done what I've done, I've seen it. I've seen it, you know,
Yeah.
and we all go through this. We
is.
scorn, we chastise, we criticize, we judge. This is the human animal.
It's the
there.
human experience, exactly.
It's there.
Because
Yeah.
that which we judge is merely that which we are observing.
Or we're fearful.
Right, because like what we love and hate in others is that which we love and hate
That's right.
in ourselves.
Or we're afraid to acknowledge, or afraid to investigate, or we're afraid to
exactly.
even,
Exactly.
you know, venture toward.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
it's fascinating. At the same time, as I said, it's a process. It's a
Yeah.
process, and it's fascinating.
process, exactly.
I find it fascinating.
And I love this acronym for God. I love acronyms. I'm such a wordsmith, being a lyricist, being a rapper, right? For God, G, all things germinate. You plant the
Yes.
seed, it grows. G, operates, that has a purpose. And then D, it decays,
Mm-hmm.
decomposes. For what? For the next germination, for the next seed to grow. And this process creates this triplicity, which we know in astrology is, you know, triplicity is the cardinal, fixed,
Yes.
immutable
Yes.
nature of all things.
That's right.
Or the Trinity, if you think of it from Christianity, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I don't like that, Father, Son, Holy Spirit. I think Father, Mother, and Child.
Yes.
What is, Holy Spirit, we make it so mystical. And that's what religion does. It makes it
Well,
so,
yeah.
right?
Catholicism and Orthodox to an extent, but I find the Orthodox faith a little bit more kind of verbatim. I found that Catholicism,
Verbatim.
yeah, it's very to
yeah,
the point.
Yeah.
But I mean, Catholicism at one point made it into a mystical,
Yes.
you know, with the priests
Obscured.
and the monks. And I mean,
Yes.
I don't dislike the Catholic Church. I don't like what some of the things have happened. Sadly, with repression leads to confliction. Life happens. And the thing that I find fascinating about the whole thing, though, is the aspect of the show. Because remember, many people, not even people still exist, are very not conscious of the aspect of knowledge, not being given the chance. They haven't been able to learn. So it was the visual, theatrical, you know, behind
Yeah.
what was being shown
Yes.
in order to get them to understand the aspect of there is something greater than thou self.
Yes.
Therefore,
Yes.
you must behave. But that has changed. I heard a fascinating philosophy from a scholar. I'm not going to quote this because this is not exact. He himself is Jewish, and he was speaking about the levels of Hinduism, Judaism, and how they've matured by way of age and hundreds of thousands of years. Christianity being in its late teen, early adult years, and some of the other faiths still ascending the level. And I mean, people can correct me if I'm wrong. They're still ascending the level. So they're not wrong in their
They're
reaction,
just part of
their emotion.
process. They're just
The Catholic faith, it depends on where. If it's
On
a
where
state
in
of
their
repression,
process, yes.
they're still going to act out. So there's a lot. It's fascinating.
And when you say oppression, I think to myself as the D part of the God. Decompression. Meaning like oppression might be the very state where you need to digress. Digression,
Yes.
perhaps. Because sometimes, and any true wisdom, truth keeper, knowledge keeper knows this. Socrates said, I know one thing for sure, I know nothing.
Yes.
So if you did come to understand anything at all, then you need to now digress so that you can learn the next,
That's right.
perhaps. So I think the concept of what I experienced there about the 37, and I looked at the geometry, and within the hexagram of the Star of David was 37 units, and then 73 units included all 6 triangles around it. And this Star of David represents the 6, or the 6 is in Greek, I'm Greek, hexi, hex.
Yes.
Hexi.
Yes.
And that hex, we're referring to the Abrahamic religions, whether it's the Mecca, in the cube of Mecca, it's a hexahedron.
Yes.
Open up a hexahedron, three-dimensional cube, you have a cross.
Yes.
There's Christianity. Six pointed star, Judaism. We're talking about Abraham. We're talking about a constellation. And it's like if you zoom out, to me that's Pisces.
Yes.
We were just talking about this. Like, you zoom in, that's Virgo, right?
Yes.
So we can discern, dissect. It's like the knife, dissect, and we need that. But like Pisces is the opposite sign, where we zoom out now and see the big picture. And the thing that stuck with me and I couldn't ever unknow, which is why I call knowledge a burden, because it's like, oh man, now it's like, you know this. So you better contemplate it and you better make sure that you can implement it. Otherwise, it's just knowledge. And like Bruce Lee said, like, knowing without applying is not knowing to begin with.
Mm-hmm.
So like this idea that now I understand astrotheology, something that was introduced to me from a documentary called Zeitgeist. Do you remember Zeitgeist?
I remember I didn't watch it, but I watched a little of it. I thought it was fabulous, though.
The first part,
Yes.
the greatest
Yes.
story ever told. And they
Yes.
basically show you like 12 constellations. They show you Christ, whether Krishna or Christ or Muhammad, like these guys, Dionysius of Mithra of Persia. Like, it just shows you that these are always the same attributes.
Yes.
Wandered around like with these 12 disciples.
Yes.
Disciples,
Yes.
where we get the word discipline. The students, pedagogy.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we're talking about the idea of like teaching or passing on some wisdom that's so important that we must like know
Yes, that's right.
for our own existence. And it's like in that documentary, astrotheology was the beginning for me of a point of no turning back, of no turning back, because now I understood this hex, XC, 6, or what we also call the mark of the beast, 666. I understood now that like we're talking about the Abrahamic religion, so we're referring to a timeline within this procession of equinoxes, which is such a small period. It's like 25,920, I think it is, years. They call it a Platonic year. But there's a way bigger like timeline. There's the epochs of what we call the yugas. Kali Yuga. Have you heard the concept of yuga?
I've heard of Yuga.
Right? And we're apparently in Kali. Kali is like the most dense. It's after this age, it's iron. I think it's the iron. It's the most dense. So you have silver, bronze, gold, and iron. Kali is iron, and we're in iron. And after this age, we enter the golden age.
Yes.
But like, and we call it the age of Aquarius, right?
Pluto and Aquarius.
Yeah.
It's happening. We're in it.
It's happening.
We're starting.
Yes. But like ultimately what it has to do with is these cycles, this process, to go back to what you said.
Yes.
It's a process. And that's why I love that acronym of God. Germinate, operate, degenerate. And this creates vorticity.
Can I just interject about the devil for a minute? So I've always had this big philosophy in all these years I've done what I've done about the devil. So my philosophy is about the devil is that the devil is not this evil creature from the center of the earth coming out, with claws
and
walking
horns
with cloven feet and feet, probably as close to a Capricorn as you're going to get.
Right.
My philosophy about the devil within the aspect of religious, philosophical belief is that the devil is the human animal in Precambrian man. We were using these pretty nails with manicures to dig root vegetables. We were barbaric in regards to our hunting abilities that we were learning, having children, not living within civilized scenarios. And it was the aspect of the devil. So the aspect about religious ascension was that the learned ability to evolve, to understand the aspect of the world within a solar system, within the aspect of a greater outer divinity, God, this huge, bigger than
greater
essence.
outer divinity, God. Did you?
Well, I've heard that, and many people have dropped that. They say,
did
that
you
it's
just
crap.
drop an acronym for God? I
Yes.
never heard.
Well, people don't
Greater
agree with that. I've read it, and I made sort of
outer
sense.
divinity.
It was somebody made that. They assimilated that to the terminology of God. But I would believe that what it is God is not this man on a throne. My philosophy is that God is an ever being, that is the energy of the universe, that mankind being the human animal, whatever to what we are affiliated to, a combination of, the aspect about the devil was what humanity was.
Yes.
And we can fall into that.
Yes. Yes.
Extreme sexuality, murder, anger.
Materialism.
We still have it.
Yeah.
But the ascension is the higher level of being, that you ascend.
Yes.
And that doesn't mean that you're flying up to heaven with wings on.
Right.
It means that you are understanding from a cognizant level.
Transcending.
When I read the book Creative Visualization, I'd come back from school, and Shakti Gawain, whom I met, who's gone now, she's gone. Shakti was fabulous, and she wrote the book Creative Visualization. I say everybody should read the book. I think it's phenomenal.
Who is that from?
Shakti Gawain.
Shakti Gawain.
And that was her assimilated name. She went to India and studied.
Right,
And part of it, I read the book till 3 o'clock in the morning one night. And I was not a reader. I'm not somebody who sits and reads books. I love them. I just don't do it.
You're more acoustic? Like
I'm more acoustic, more visual, but And I remember the first night I did the meditation, I went out with friends and they thought I was surreal. They said, what the hell has come over you? I could never go fishing again. I didn't want to hurt. What am I going to hurt a fish for? And I went through this very ethereal development, and I saw all this sparkly air, and I remember breathing it in during the meditation. That was part of what that had shown me. So that again was the next step of evolution. That was in 1994. So you see, we're all on this path to evolve.
Yes.
Whether it be through confliction, heartbreak, conflict.
Yeah.
It's about evolution.
It's
Because if you're not evolving, everybody does, from the most affluent to the most poor.
Yeah.
You're going to go through evolution.
Because it's like
We
a
all
spiral. You're going up or you're going down.
That's what it's for.
Right?
That's what we're here for.
And I love that, like, that evolve is an anagram for love.
Yes.
Like, so when you're in the vibration of love, you're going up. You're ascending.
That's right.
Right? Yeah. That's beautiful,
right.
man. I get that. Honestly, Hunter, I want to say, really, like, it's been such a pleasure, man. Like,
It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, we have to have you back. I mean, some of the stuff that was even just discussed on the deck there by the lake, like before we even got on the
we
mic
started
in the
talking about
studio,
everything before.
right? Like, there is so much, and I just want to remind you, like, and this is how I pretty much sort of conclude every episode, because this is so important. This is how I conclude every day. This is how I find sense in life. When the mind is calmly collected and the imagination is properly directed, the dots are easily connected. So
There you go.
that said, like, find a practice that collects your mind, that calms you. Start to learn about the archetypes. Because when the imagination is properly directed, like, once you understand archetypes, and that's why we can have this conversation. That's why we're able to talk even outside there with Tara and Julia, like, because we all have a general, we're symbol literate.
That's right.
Symbol literate in the sense of, like, the archetypal, astrological, but, like, there's so many different archetypes. There's numerology, there's Eastern, there's Western, there's Mayan, but, like, calm your mind, learn symbology, and then connect the dots.
That's right.
You'll see.
That's right.
You know? And I say, I'm just here trying to connect the dots, and I'm just sharing this process with you by sharing these incredible people like you who I've been blessed with the opportunity to meet and then have these conversations. And when we have these conversations, I think the word, if we look at it etymologically, I remember this, con is the prefix for with.
Yes.
Versation as in verse.
Yes.
Like universe. Verse is Latin for song. So a conversation is like this, like musical collaboration.
Yes.
And with some people, you'll find that to be dissonant. In others, you'll find it to be amplifying. And I honestly, bro, like, that's why, like, I think I met you 10 years ago.
More than that.
Maybe more.
15, 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then here we are.
And we connected. And every time I saw you on Facebook, I would even really on Instagram, it was always you doing a yoga move on one leg.
But whatever it was, you remembered
Yes.
me. You remembered the connection.
And there were mutual interactions with people, Whitney and Corby and people that there was this link. There was a synchronicity there.
Yeah. And the beauty is that, like, going back to that acronym for time, a temporarily induced mind experiment. Because what is time? Einstein proved it. It's relative. So even though it's been that long, I feel like I'm sitting here.
It's just yesterday.
Yesterday with you in Jet Fuel.
Jet Fuel.
Toronto,
talking.
Ontario. Cabbiestown,
with my
actually.
friend Fanny, who was Greek.
Right.
That's how we connected.
So
Fanny was
I
there
want to
that day.
thank you, brother, for coming out
You're welcome.
all the
Thank
way
you.
here to the Lake Wilcox.
Yes, Lake Wilcox from Blue Earn Avenue Road.
Right. So stay tuned because we're gonna have you back. We have to have you back.
That'll be
There's
fun.
so much we can impact.
Talk about psychic stuff next time.
Yes, because that
Yes.
was actually outside what I mentioned is like not only your
Well, I've been a psychic. The first thing and foremost
Primarily.
was psychic.
yes.
The astrology thing, you learn every day. You keep, I want to do a few courses with some more people. You have to get deeper, and there's asteroids and minor asteroids, and it gets deeper and deeper, and it is actually fairly mathematical.
It is.
It's mathematical.
Yes.
But again,
Bed mass,
the
order of
thing-
operation.
Yes, the thing that I believe is, again, it is the placebo effect with yourself. That you accept and you actually denounce the negative. You acknowledge it, but you don't
Yes.
carry that.
Yes, yes.
And you actually work on, okay, I know not to do, but I know
Yes.
now what I'm going to work on.
Yes.
So I'll say that to clients all the time.
Yes.
Focus on the positives that are right ahead of you. That's not to say somebody that's seriously ill is going to say, oh, everything's fabulous. But if you step out of that commitment to the negative and you try to really work around, you'll actually change that story. It could take a little bit of time.
Totally. Commitment to the negative, like you said, because we
Oh.
are like by default programmed to just subscribe
Fear.
to this negative
Fear.
fear. Yeah.
Fear.
Yeah.
That's the human animal again, though.
Yes. Yes.
You let a gunshot go off, every deer in the field's going to run.
Right.
So it is fear
Yes.
by way of visual, audio, vibrational.
Yes.
And we pick it up everywhere. You're in a big city.
Yeah.
You're
yeah.
picking it up everywhere you
Totally.
go. Everything you see. everything you
unconsciously,
hear.
you're picking it
It's
up.
there.
It's not even yours, and then now
That's
you're
right.
thinking of it.
That's right.
But yeah, primarily, Hunter is before even an astrologer. I think you're a psychic, and
Yes.
you proved that right upstairs, right there
Yes.
with my fiance. I was like, oh my god.
Yeah, I do it sometimes. You know, I was out with a friend of mine, as I was saying to my friend Desiree, and I kind of freaked out the couple in Yorkville. So I try not to.
Well,
I
you
just
called
did it, I
the
just did it to a
Virgo-
neighbor. I just did it to a neighbor and her sister, and I don't mean to. And people will say he's crazy anyway. So I always get the he's crazy or who the hell does he think he is? So I always say the who does he think he is a step up.
Interesting dichotomy.
That's the Leo.
Yeah.
Who does he think he is?
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
Exactly.
because people are unnerved by that which they cannot see, feel, touch, taste.
Yes.
They become very unnerved.
That's why we're scared of the dark.
Of course. Well, I don't like the dark either.
Yeah.
I live beside a graveyard. I didn't
Because
like that
we can't
either.
see, feel exactly. We can't
You know.
palpate that.
That's right.
Yeah. Brother, it's been such. I love you for coming all
Thank
the
you
way
so
here
much,
to
buddy.
the lake. Because, I mean, geographically, I told you, I'm like, listen, you're close enough that you're coming in the studio. I'm like,
Yeah, Lake Wilcox has been since, I think, 1993 or 4.
apparently, yes.
I haven't been here in a long time.
It's a
Very pretty, though. Very pretty.
It is. It's a kettle lake. It's a real true lake, and it's got the sister. Bond Lake is
Wow.
right next door, and I think it's called St. George. Anyways, nature has its way of bringing all of this souls together in this way.
That's right. That's
And
right.
I'm grateful for it. Thank you for everyone
Thank you.
watching.
Thank you, everybody.
Stay tuned for the next one. We will have Hunter back again.
Thanks very much.